Hey guys, and welcome to another video of The Guide, our tutorial series on FIFA 19. I'm Benjamin, also known as Taz, and today we are going to strengthen your defense. How? We are going to teach you a technique how to deal better with through passes because they are very dangerous in FIFA 19, and by this technique you will understand and recognize what's going to happen next. You can anticipate and act accordingly to have much better control about these situations by doing an early player switch. One note about this, it does require that you do the player switch with the right stick and not with the default button L1 LB. This is somewhat of a more advanced technique, but we're going to explain it in this video how to do it, and we also will have a dedicated video about this as well in the future as part of the guide. If you find this video helpful, please leave a like and also subscribe to the channel, and now let's start with the explanation how to do it. This situation is very good to understand how to do this technique. As you can see, my opponent is on a counter attack and there's a large gap in between my defenders, and the player of my opponent, Martial, is about to get into this space. He's already fully accelerated and this is very dangerous. At the moment I have Milner selected, and obviously I am not going to catch up Martial and I have no chance to interfere with him. So I have to switch my player. As you can see, if I would use the player switching button L1 LB, I would get switched to my left back. You can see this by the white indicator above him, and even though he's closer to the goal, he is not in a very good position to interfere with Martial. Why? Because he is facing at the moment the player who's in ball position, and if I want to get back with him, I would have to turn around and then accelerate, and this is going to take too much time and I wouldn't be able to catch up on him. So I have to switch to another player, and my other defender here is in a much better position because he's already turned and he's starting to accelerate in the right direction. So I want to switch to him because he has a much higher chance to interfere with the opponent's player on its way to the goal. And I switch to him with a direct player switch with the right stick. And here it is how it's done. You flick the right stick into the direction to the player that you want to switch to, relative to the player that you have at the moment. So here I have Milner selected and I want to switch to the defender who's on the left to him. So I flick the right stick into the left direction. And by doing this, you get switched to this defender and you can start to cover the run. And now comes the question to mind, how to cover the run in the best way. And this wouldn't be a good idea because you are too far away. When you try to cross your opponent like that, there's a high chance that you're going to miss him and then he's going to get past you, and then you probably lost your last good chance to interfere the opponent. Instead, you should try to get to your own goal as fast as possible. Take the advantage that you don't have to dribble the ball, so you can accelerate faster and have higher pace, and try to get your defender in a position to be in the way of the opponent and have an influence on his moves. We are going to start the how to use it segment by explaining how you can recognize situations when it's necessary to apply this technique, because there are two main criteria. The first one is there has to be either some space behind the defensive line or a gap in the defensive line or a run by your opponent player. Sometimes it's just a combination of these things. So in this example, my left back is out of position, I try to get to the ball and I fail with that, and afterwards there's so much space on the top side and there are two opponent players who can start to make a run into this space. So the first criteria is obviously fulfilled. Now we come to the second criteria. My opponent has to play a pass to take advantage of these runs. And as you can see here, I have some players surrounding the player who's going to play the pass, but none of them can really prevent this pass from happening because they are too far away. And this is the second criteria. I'm pretty convinced that my opponent is going to play this pass and there's no action from me to prevent this pass from happening. So I can't switch to a player to prevent this pass. So now I'm in a position where I know what's going to happen next. There is space, there are runs by the attacking players, and my opponent is able to play this pass easily. He is going to do it. So now I can use the direct player switch to be ahead of my opponent, think ahead, I know what's going to happen next, and act accordingly. Switch to the player who can have an influence on the upcoming development. In this situation it would be this defender because he's in the best position to cover the space on the top, and that's why I flick the right stick into the left direction, because he's to the left side relatively to the player that I have selected at the moment, switch to him and then cover up the space to the top. As you can see, it worked out perfectly, the pass got intercepted, and now I just want to briefly explain how to deal with this situation, because you want to secure the ball position and most of the time an opponent is going to be nearby. So what you can do is you can either play a pass most of the time to the goalkeeper or to a teammate to the side. Most important, don't play a pass in the opposite direction, as we explained in our basic passing video. Make sure to check that out as well. And another solution could be that you change direction in the dribbling to outmove your opponent, but it depends a lot on how safe and secure you feel in the dribbling and that you know what your opponent is going to do next. This is another good example to understand how to think ahead. In this scene, I'm playing in the red jerseys because it's a friendly game and the footage is from my opponent, and he's playing the pass to Vieira. And as you can see, there's a large gap in my defensive line, a lot of space, and his Ronaldo is in a very good position. So it's obvious that he is going to play a through pass to Ronaldo. And as you can see, there is no one nearby to prevent this pass from happening. So in this situation, I use the direct player switch to Desai and make sure that he's in a good position to cover the run. And for this, I flick the right stick to the right and a little bit to the top because I want to make sure to get Desai and not Ferdinand. And then, as you can see, I'm able to control Desai and get him in a position to get control over the situation. Here, right after, I started to push and pull by pressing the circle button as soon as Ronaldo accepted the ball, but you have to be very cautious with that because there's a risk that you're going to lose this duel, and it depends a lot on the situation. Another way is to block the running path by using the L2 or LB button, and then your player is using his body to block the running path of the opponent to some extent, but we're going to have a dedicated video about how you should behave in running duels like that. There are several pros for this technique. You can ensure that your player is fully accelerated and by this gets in a position to make it difficult for your opponent to score a goal. This player is your insurance that your opponent doesn't score because he is going to be in the way. And you make sure that the AI doesn't screw up, for example with bad running pass or stops and turns. This happens sometimes, but not if you are controlling this player who is the most important in the defense. Also, these are good situations to train and get comfortable with a player switching with the right stick. Even when you screw up, you just run backwards with another player and the harm is manageable. Player switching with L1 LB wouldn't lead to a better position because most of the time you would get switched to a player who doesn't have an influence on the situation. From my opinion, there's only one con to this technique. Because you're switching to a player who's far away from the opponent who's in ball possession, it's hard for you to put pressure on him. So he has time to find another option when he realizes that you only cover the space and don't put pressure on him, and by this other options might come available, and this sometimes can be dangerous. Our pro tip maybe can help you with that issue. As soon as you switch the player with the right stick, you can press the R1 or RB button to put pressure on the player who's in ball possession with one of your CPU defenders. The player who has the white indicator above him is going to challenge the player of the opponent who is in ball possession. But the use of this can be very tricky and it's not always possible to have someone nearby to really challenge the opponent, and we are going to have a dedicated video about the use of the CPU pressing with R1 or RB as well. Using this technique is very important to strengthen your defense because, as you can see in these examples, most of the time you're not in a good position because your opponent has a good opportunity to score a goal. So you have to do something, and now you're able to recognize these situations and anticipate what your opponent is going to do next and act accordingly. So this is somewhat similar to playing chess and doing the right move in advance. As you might have noticed, there are a lot of topics that will help you with that. For example, how to player switch with the right stick, how to secure ball possession, how to behave in running duels. These are all topics that we're also going to cover as part of the guide. Make sure to check out the video description to see if these videos are already available, and also find information about our private coaching with Top 100 or elite players. I hope this video was helpful for you. If so, please leave a like and also share it with your friends. Subscribe to this channel and also activate the bell to not miss any of the upcoming videos of the guide. Thanks for your attention, keep a clean sheet, I'm out.